about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dali, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I get asked if I know any more about this no tax on tips, because apparently the media is confusing the hell of everybody on this as well. The campaign promises of no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, I think were fantastic campaign messages. They were so fantastic, done by Trump's side, that Kamala Harris decided to also take that on. So when I first heard that this is what both sides wanted, and having been a tip worker myself, waiting tables and bartending, I definitely see the plus side. But I also, as we talked about, saw the negative side of things, which you have to when you look at politics, right? Which and my hobby is political strategy. Because look at what happened with the wiping off student loan debt. The Democrats thought that writing off student loan debt would be a windfall for them at the polls. And the average person who paid their student loans off was not happy with that. The average person that skipped college because of the cost and decided to forego college because they didn't want to get a loan, pretty ticked off about that. So the Democrats learned that the writing off student loan debt was not popular and can really bite them in the butt. And so it happened for some, but it wasn't the widespread, going viral thing that they wanted. Well, same thing with no taxes on tips. No taxes on tips, I think is cool, but I wanted to know if it was going to be within reason. Because many individuals, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars on their tips. And so for them to not have to pay any taxes on that, I was like, well, that's going to tick a lot of people off, because many of these tipped workers, especially in Vegas, make big bucks. The other thing, too, is it could change the tip culture to even more. Right now, it's been really confrontational, the whole tip culture. People are getting angry. And they're even leaving crap tips because they are so gosh darn mad at where this is going. And so the push to tip us, one concern is that going to be even more now aggressive? So the big, beautiful bill did pass by July 4th, where tipped and non-exempt workers could be able to deduct significant portions of their tips. So it wasn't, if you make $200,000 a year as a valet or as a bartender, you still do have to pay taxes. You still have to pay your Social Security tax. You still have to pay your Medicare taxes. But what FisherPhillips.com summarized is you must earn $150,000 or less in 2025 to be eligible for couples' combined income of $300,000. Only cash tips, those charged or those received under tip sharing, and tips reported to employers for payroll tax purposes are eligible. The maximum deduction for tip income is $25,000 per year. Now, I know this got a lot of groans out of people, but I think that piece is what made a lot of Americans say, okay, I'm good with it now. Because they were worried that people making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in tips, and that being their main income, were going to get out of paying taxes. So the $25,000 deduction is huge. And if you are making more than $25,000 in tips plus your salary, you're probably going to still be okay. Now, the exemptions are not lifelong. They will go through the year 2028. Congress will have to extend it. Now, I like when things sunset. Like the Medicaid expansion during Obamacare should have sunsetted, and it didn't sunset. And now we have a problem with millions of people being on it, many of them able-bodied, no children, no medical conditions, can work, and they're just not working, and they're getting it. That's, people choosing not to work, that's a problem. And so I think the sunset does have to happen. And then if Congress wants to extend it in 2028, they can. And I think they will, and they might even change it to increase the amount. But I do like the idea of tip workers getting that relief. The other thing, too, is the average tip worker, I don't want to say the average, but a lot of tip workers don't, shall we say, they aren't as transparent about their tips. And so, one thing that did kind of concern people is, especially with tip workers, is they're like, so now I have to get the deduction, report my tips. What if I've pocketed them? Now, how do I do this? Because now I have to tell the IRS, in order to get my deduction, that I made this much in tips, but I didn't last year, so are they going to think something's fishy? Well, you should have always been honest about it. I was. When I got tips waiting tables, I was honest. And the reason why is my employer had a record, even though it was on paper. And my employer kept those records. So I was not going to mess with that. Last thing I wanted is the IRS, coming at me while I was a medical student. So we would all have to write down what we were paying, our bussers. And it was kind of a percentage of what we got. I always went above that because I wanted our bussers taken care of. So that would imply I got more tips. But our employer had an idea of how much tips we got, especially if the tips were given on a credit card. So, I'm not going to lie. So which jobs are covered by this? Apparently not every job. So the jobs that include the no taxes on tips are your bartenders, your wait staff, the most common ones, food servers, etc. But some of the other tip worker, you might want to double check. Ushers do also get to write off their tips. If you're an usher, if you're a bellhop, a porter, concierge. But double check, because if you get tips when you're not supposed to, that might not be covered. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
are back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-Doc Dali, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Okay, so again, I apologize about the issues with our Facebook Live. I love that a lot of you guys watch the show. I better start wearing more makeup. I really apologize. I don't necessarily dress up for our live feeds, but I will try to do the best I can. All right, just please bear with me through the technical errors. At least our radio show is going well. So we have our Facebook Live back up. Now, the report from UNICEF came out saying that there are more obese kids in the world than underweight kids. Obesity in children has now overtaken underweight children. Now, I kind of like the fact that kids are not underweight. That really worried me that we had underweight kids. So in a way, we're doing something right in making sure these kids aren't starving. But on the other end, the percentage of kids that are now obese is getting ridiculously high. So we're doing something wrong. In fact, according to CNN, let me give you a little bit of this report. They say obesity now exceeds underweight in all regions of the world except sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. This was looking at data from 190 countries. So unfortunately, the number of overweight children has doubled from 194 million to 391 million in the past 25 years. So is it a big shock that President Trump and RFK Jr. wants to address childhood obesity? Not a big shock. Okay, this is something that we really have to look at. And so RFK Jr. Has a game plan on making children healthy again. Make American children healthy again. Now, there's a lot of parts to this as to what he wants to address. So one is taking a look at these childhood vaccines. I don't blame him for wanting to look at them. I love vaccines. I love the fact that we have a robust vaccine program. But if there is a concern about the chronic disease or obesity or neurodevelopmental disorders as it pertains to Tylenol, and I mean, we do need somebody looking at this. I think it's about time. Or at least the doctors he hires. He's not a physician. I do prefer a physician being in charge of HHS, but if he is surrounded by Dr. McCary and other individuals who will look at the science, who are board certified and are doing exactly what should be done as it pertains to unbiased studies and keeping politics out, I am going to be supportive. But they are going to be also looking at pesticides. They outlined a strategic approach, quote, for executive actions to address a childhood chronic disease crisis through advancing research, realigning incentives, increasing public awareness, and fostering private sector collaborations. They are working to make America healthy again and end the childhood chronic disease crisis. So they're going to look at pesticides. They're going to look at vaccines. They're going to look at obesity. They're going to look at exercise. They're going to look at what we're doing in schools. They're going to look at probably our school lunches. They're working with the EPA. You know, they're going to look at farming to reduce chemical use. The EPA is also going to launch a public awareness campaign about the limited use of certain chemicals and exposures. And so whether it's ultra-processed food, whether it's a lack of exercise, whether it's our food choices, whether it's SNAP benefits paying for junk food, it is about flipping time. Somebody looks at this. Somebody addresses this. So right now, RFK Jr. is getting a lot of hits from some doctor groups and some individuals, even though doctors are really mixed as it pertains to widespread vaccine use, as we discussed. You know, some doctors, there's a lot of OBs that refuse to give the vaccine to their pregnant patients. So, we want more information. That's kind of how we were trained. Before we make a widespread recommendation, now that the dust is settled with COVID, it's still out there, let's at least look at the data to make sure that what we're recommending is the safest. Same thing with our foods. Now, we got to be careful, having a company swap out one chemical for another. But if we don't need titanium dioxide in our food and in our candy, let's take it out. I don't need my food to be very brilliantly colored. In fact, I avoid Mountain Dew because it's just too fluorescent. I'm nervous about putting that in my body. I don't like to put a lot of food colorings. You know, there was a Cookie Monster cake years ago that I got for one of my kids' birthdays because I love Cookie Monster cookies. And the Cookie Monster cake had the most perfect blue frosting. It was Cookie Monster blue. And I ate a nice giant piece of that cake. Well, the next day, I forgot that I had had that cake. And I get a little nervous because my poop was green. And my poop was green for a couple days. And then I saw it was almost like somebody put food coloring into the toilet bowl. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. I had Cookie Monster cake. And I'm thinking to myself, why did I put that in my body? Why did I put that into my kid's body? Because we trust that Cookie Monster blue food coloring is safe. Well, how do we know it doesn't collect? And look at tattoo ink. There's studies looking at tattoo ink where the ink migrates and chemicals migrate and sit in your lymph node system. Now, the average person who has tattoos, I think, does fine. I don't think they get cancer from it. But what if some people will be vulnerable because of tattoo ink? Don't we need to study it? Don't we need to look at that? So make our children healthy again, I think, could be one of the most promising, successful campaigns out of this second Trump term, if they do it right. The problem is there's a lot to do. Getting kids away from video games, getting kids out there and exercising, getting kids away from processed food, getting junk food off of SNAP benefits, and getting parents or people that are on SNAP the actual chicken and eggs and turkey and making sure that gets into their cart and not junk food. Making sure that the medications we're giving these kids are proper. We've started to really roll back antibiotic use in kids. Parents are like, my kid needs an antibiotic. And I'm like, why? Well, they have a cough. I know we used to give antibiotics all the time, but does your child really need an antibiotic? What if it's viral? Let's really take a look and see what we're giving our kids. ADHD medication. There are some individuals that really struggle from true ADHD, but there's others that, need a different form of learning, need to be engaged differently. Not everybody could sit on a hard chair for 8 hours and learn. Some need to be more hands-on, which is why I told you we need to change the way we do schools, where it's 20-minute classes, core classes all in the morning, and then afternoon is all your practical learning. You're going to see kids soar in terms of learning things and being able to know what they want to be later in life if they get exposed to all the trades and all the different things and also learn how to fish and farm. You know how many people have absolutely no clue about farming? It wasn't until Clarkson's Farm did a TV show where people are like, oh, really? Well, we all should understand the basics of farming. We should also know how to grow some of our own food. How many people garden, grow their own herbs? No, we don't do it because we just get into our own little, because somehow if it's not important and it's not taught in school, people think it's not important at all. By the way, PE should not be 3 times a week. We should be exercising every day. If you're going to be reciting Shakespeare, why aren't we reciting it while we're walking around the school campus? Why do we have to sit in a classroom? If we're working on our times tables, why aren't we doing that while we're walking? You could quiz kids, and say, Billy, what's 5 times 3? 15. Okay. Maggie, what's 8 times 7? 56. You can do that while you're walking. I mean, there's a lot of ways. Do we teach kids how to use a gym? When I was at school, one of the 12 schools I went to, we did have gym where it was a gym, and that was really good. So we got to learn how to appreciate weightlifting and the different machines. I think that's very crucial because kids need to find a way that they could work out. They need to learn how to hike. They need to learn about altitude sickness. They need to learn about first aid. And as I've said this time and time again, if we're going to have academic remediation for kids, why aren't we getting physical fitness remediation as well? If you have a child that cannot run a mile, they have remediation. It's a coach, it's a personal trainer that works with them athletically. If they can't throw a ball, if they can't kick a ball, one, do they have a neurodevelopmental disorder? But if they don't, how can we help them so that they can enjoy those things? What if they can't ride a bike? So I make America children, or make children healthy again, is important. So I'm really excited about this next phase. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
In 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So Fox News and a Gallup poll is reporting that Americans' view of capitalism has fallen to its lowest level since Gallup started to track our views on economic systems back in 2010. And according to the poll, 54% of Americans still had a positive view of capitalism in 2025. Sadly, this is down from 60% in 2021. Socialism favorability remains steady at 39%. Now, capitalism was still preferred over socialism, but really 54% to 39%? It's getting closer. And Democrats ended up, viewing more, I think, socialism trends than Republicans. The favorability views among Democrats and independents dropped about 8 points. Fewer than half of Democrats viewed capitalism positively. Only a slim majority of independents did. But Republicans' views of capitalism have remained unchanged. So the Democrats' favorability towards socialism has climbed from 50% to 2/3 in 2025. Republicans and independents generally steady. And the Democrats, being more pro-socialism is a definite turn because we see a split in the Democratic Party. The progressive socialist AOC's Bernie Sanders, and then the moderate Democrats, which are like, look, we're going to the extremes here. We can only promise so much. And, when people say, but look, Daliah, you don't know anything about socialism. Okay? You don't live in a socialized society. So how do you know it won't work? Okay, well, I don't live in a socialized society. However, what I do see is what government runs. I see government-run Medicare. I see government-run Medicaid. I see the VA system. And it's lacking. Our veterans deserve better. Now, some VA systems are fantastic. But I get patient after patient saying, look, I need to see a civilian. I need to go to the civilian sector for my health care because I'm making no progress in the VA system. It takes months to get in. I can't get a scan done, etc. Now, that's starting to be, though, in the capitalistic and in the civilian sector. But, if you tell me government will run health care if we let, medicine become socialized, I'd be like, but Medicare is a mess and we're running out of money. Medicaid is a mess. That's why, we're running out of funds for Medicaid, which is why we're telling people who are able-bodied and non-injured and not sick and don't have kids to get the hell back to work or go back to school if you're going to get Medicaid. We don't have enough money to be socialized. And what socialism advocates keep saying is the rich will pay for it. The rich will pay for it. Well, are they really paying for it? Now, we have individuals who are very rich. Bill Gates, Elon Musk. Yeah, these people are really, really rich. But the average person that might look like they qualify as rich might not actually have the extra money you think they do. So let's say somebody makes $300,000 a year, and you're like, wow, whew, that's nice. Okay, well, a third goes to taxes. Okay, expected, maybe more, 35%. All right. And so now they're, let's say, 198 or 180 something. Okay, with the money they have. Then with that, if somebody is making $300,000, what city are they living in? What's their rent? Okay, $300,000 job in New York might be only a $200,000 job in another state. So their rent, their transportation, their costs, and it wasn't until, because I was like, okay, you're rich, you're making six figures. I'm not playing a violin for you. But there was an actress who said she made $1 million, and I'm like, please, I do not want to hear her sob story. But when she explained what happened after taxes, what she had to pay for rent, what she had to pay for security, what her take home was, it wasn't much. Also, I forget the actor who was in Harry Potter and White Lotus. He also said, you spend the money. It's not, unless you're going to live in an apartment and do what you did in your 20s, you're not going to be having a bunch of money in the bank unless you're investing it, unless you're, I'm a physician. You would think that I would have tons of money in the bank, but not after taxes, not after student loans, after paying staff, kids, trying to put the kids through college, when you start looking, not to mention family members who are asking for money. This is definitely a concern. And so when you look at, okay, well, we have all these people who make over $300,000. How much extra could they pay in taxes to pay for free buses, to pay for government-run grocery stores, to pay for free Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound and Mounjaro for people? You're not going to be able to pull all that money. I would love, an extra few million from Elon Musk, but is that really going to pay for everything? So when people say, well, we need socialism, the rich will pay more, like Zoran Mondani saying, we'll make the rich pay for this. Really? What are, when my office was not bringing in money because of Obamacare, because the attitude is doctors make too much money, and I had to pay staff, and I couldn't take out any salary, and I had to pay rent, and I had to pay malpractice insurance, pay workers' comp insurance. What did I end up doing? I ended up closing up. I made sure somebody else hired my staff, but even with them, they ended up letting staff go. The money runs out, and it's not constant. That's a problem. So, one thing I've actually agreed with Zoran Mondani with, this is going to be a shock, is he is demanding FIFA to reverse their dynamic pricing for 2026 World Cup and allowing there to be seats at discounted rates for locals. Now, this is something I've been complaining about with Las Vegas. It really ticked me off that I have been advocating for the Super Bowl. I have been advocating for us to have a stadium for decades. I have supported the cause. I've promoted it. and we get a Super Bowl, and the majority of us couldn't even think about buying a ticket because of how ridiculously priced it was. I couldn't really go to my own Super Bowl in my own city. It's ticking me off. You know, Golden Knights. Luckily, I've been able to see some Golden Knights games, but boy, are those tickets expensive. And so Zoran Mondani wants, the World Cup to be accessible to some of the locals. So he's demanding that FIFA reverses course with their dynamic pricing plan, which basically sets ticket prices based on demand. Well, there's going to be a lot of demand. Now, I don't like price caps. I don't like the government getting involved. He wants a cap on resale prices, because a lot of people buy tickets and then sell them. But I do like the idea that there be access for local residents to go and see the game. I think that's important. And that's kind of what's happening in my city, too. We have to be able to let locals, and not just a radio station giving away some tickets. If locals feel that their city doesn't care about them, that it's all about California coming in or another, that's not cool. I never thought I would agree with Zoran on anything. Just that one very small thing. Everything else, nope. He's an idiot. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I believe the month is up in terms of Washington, D.C. and the National Guard deployment that was needed to make D.C. safe again. In fact, President Trump was with his cabinet at a seafood restaurant last night. There were the media saying there were protesters, but you could hear people go, woohoo, yay. So I don't know who was out there protesting or showing support. But what I'm seeing with videos and TikTok and social media is people have been pretty happy about not getting carjacked, about feeling that D.C. is safe. And so he went to Joe's Seafood Prime Steak and Stone Crab in D.C. And he was He said, we're standing right in the middle of D.C., which, as you know about over the past year, was a very unsafe place over the past 20 years, and now it's got virtually no crime. He said he would not have stood out in the middle of the street as recently as a couple months ago. Now, keep in mind, he did have heavy security, but still, it was, I look at what the people on the street show, and videotape, and that is what I think is pretty, pretty telling. And so then I guess he went to eat with his cabinet, and it seems I've been to DC. I love DC. It's one of the cleanest cities. It's beautiful, but we don't usually go out at night. We knew that at night it could be pretty concerning. Now, I did walk around some of the structures. I went to the Washington Memorial at night, which is really, really cool, because I saw people lie on their back with their tushy towards the memorial and their feet in the air, like kind of like a 90-degree angle. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they said, it looks like the Washington Memorial looks like a platform, a straight platform. So I did that, and I took some pictures, and it's really, really cool. It's amazing, the optical illusion where something looking straight up in the air, if you were on your back and with your feet up, how it looks like a straight plank or walkway. So pretty cool. I did that at night. But we didn't do too much at night. We got back into our hotel room because we knew that it was, it could be pretty dangerous in some places in D.C. And that's a shame because D.C. is such a beautiful city and it's our nation's capital. So what next? Well, we're being told that the Army has extended orders for the D.C. National Guard through November 30th. And that they will remain on active duty in the Capitol through there, although Trump can pull them sooner if they feel needed. He could also extend the deployment past that date. But apparently they are not ready to just leave and let Washington go back to the way it was by tomorrow. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll signed off the plan, enabling Brigadier General Leland Blanchard, commanding general of the D.C. National Guard, to update initial orders. So this plan is for the estimated 950 guards of the D.C. members of the D.C. Guard. This does not necessarily apply to the 1,300 troops that were deployed to D.C. from other states: Louisiana, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Those troops still remain under the control of their governors, and many of them are already under orders to remain there through the end of December. Now, this is, interesting because we were wondering, Trump has made huge progress, seized illegal guns, found, criminals arrested, prevented carjackings and murders and rapes. What happens after 30 days? And, people said, well, this is a PR stunt. This is if it was a PR stunt, he would say, you see what I did? I'm going to pull everything and see you guys fall back to no. If his goal is to keep D.C. safe, 30 days and then pulling everybody out can give criminals the wrong idea. Now, I am no expert on criminology, but criminals don't have a lot of patience. They could wait 30 days. But if they're not making the money they want to make, if they're not doing the crime or acting on their impulses that they want to act on, they might move. Now, I don't want them going to another city and causing havoc there. But the longer they can't do their crime, the harder it is to go back and do it. 30 days, anybody could be patient. And so I really worried about Trump pulling D.C. Troops out and then letting everything fall back. And it could almost rebound. But the longer that is an area that you don't touch, and there still needs to be presence. And also, is the local law enforcement ready for National Guard to leave? If local law enforcement says, look, we got this, we're good, well, then that's going to help make that decision. But if they're like, we still don't have enough, we were not able to recruit extra policemen and women, we need more time. Looks like they're getting it. So we'll see what happens. They cleaned up trash. They've cleaned up roadways. There was waste. They cleaned things up. In fact, I can't wait to go back there to check it out. I got a pretty hectic next few weeks, but I definitely want to see how that's looking. In the meantime, we're still just shocked by the Irina Zarutska murder. Multiple things are shocking. One is that we didn't hear about it until later. It didn't make headlines. The media kept it quiet. Number two is Irina, after she was initially stabbed, was able to look at her killer before she succumbed to her injuries and died. 3, bystanders didn't seem to run and help. They were busy videotaping. Really? Now, the family of Zarutska, right, is asking for the public sharing these graphic videos and focus ensuring public transit in Charlotte is free of crime. They are requesting a full investigation into the Charlotte area transit system and suggested the city's transportation leaders work on improving the presence of security within the commuter rail system. They said there was failure of oversight between CATS and professional security services, and if the light rail had ensured adequate safety measures were in place, her death could have been prevented. So the Mayor V. Lyles, said that CATS will roll out new safety operations, including bike units, urban terrain vehicles in the next 2-3 weeks. And they say the city has doubled the number of security personnel. Well, apparently they weren't there yet that night. The security budget is now increased from $5.8 million, tripling to $18 million. But, it's interesting. I rode a train in Europe. They don't check for knives, or there isn't, when you go on the Eurostar, like in Europe from England to France, I believe you do go through metal detectors. But on most rail systems, you don't. You just hop on, hop off. So if you have a pocket knife, if you have your wine's corkscrew, and so a lot of train systems don't do that in terms of making sure you don't have a weapon. Now, mind you, somebody can still attack, like on that Philly train. Somebody was raping somebody, and again, nobody stopped to help her. The Daniel Penny case really scared people into jumping in and helping. Even though he was acquitted of murder, because he jumped in with 3 others, subdued the suspect, but that suspect later died. Now people are concerned. They fear they fear they'll get stabbed, or they fear that they could do something and then there'll be consequences. And sadly, people are dying or getting raped in front of other people and nothing's happening. It's horrifying. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.